Hello, this is Cascade, and I am going to start my very first podcast. This podcast is called The Way Door, and The Way Door is really my views on my worldview. And my worldview is that of Christianity. A worldview is basically how you see the world, and it's really what you live for. And so I'm really excited about this because this is what I live for. I live for the person of Jesus Christ, and I try every day to just develop my relationship with Jesus. And so this is a new area for me, this podcast. And so I'm going to give it a go here. I want to try to do at least once a week. Usually on Sunday, I'll just have to wait and see. And some of the topics that I hope to cover during this podcast include apologetics. Now, apologetics is really defending the Christian worldview. And I guess the text verse for apologetics is 1 Peter 3:15, which says, always be prepared to give a defense or a answer for the hope that you have in Jesus. And the next verse says, but do so with gentleness and respect. Well, the word for defense or answer in Greek is apologia, which actually means correctly translated defense. So I'll be talking about apologetics. I'll be talking about scientific apologetics a little bit. I'll be talking about the resurrection of Jesus. Of course, the resurrection is so important that without it, there is no Christianity. And so if you want to disprove Christianity, I think the place that someone would want to start is with the resurrection of Jesus, whether or not he resurrected or not. And I, of course, believe, and I think there is substantial evidence that leans in the favor of the Christian worldview that Jesus did rise from the dead. Also, might be talking about the New Testament and the validity of the New Testament. Can we trust these ancient documents that were recorded so long ago? I'll be talking about a little bit about arguments for God's existence. What are arguments for his existence? And I'll be looking at other arguments too. People have argued, obviously, against God. There's a lot of different religions out there. In fact, in the United States where I live, Christianity is kind of on the decline from what I've seen. Some studies that have gone out. Also, I'll be talking a lot about books that I'm currently reading or have read in the past, or things that have caught my attention that I've maybe read online or saw in a periodical or something like that. I want to talk about conversations I've had with other people, maybe believers, maybe not believers, or just things that inspire me, or certain Bible passages that I've been reading that I really liked lately. So that is some of the things I'm going to be covering in this podcast. And why is it called The Way Door? Well, the way part is taken from the book of John, which is a gospel. There's 4 gospels in the Bible: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And John was the last gospel written, and it has high Christology, which means it really talks about Jesus as being the Messiah, as being the Christ. But John 14:6, it says, Jesus speaking here, he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So there you have the way part. And I want you to notice one thing about that statement. It is an exclusive statement. Jesus says that salvation is only found in him. And that generates a lot of questions, I know. The second part, the door part, I'm taking from Revelations 3, verse 20, where Jesus says, look, I stand at the door and knock. If you hear my voice and open the door, I will come in. And then he goes on to say, and I will eat with you as with a friend. So Jesus is inviting you into a personal relationship with him in this passage here from Revelation chapter 3, verse 20. So that's why it's called the way door. I'm taking the way from John 14:6, where Jesus said, I am the way. And I'm taking the door part from Revelations 3, chapter 20. Now, I know that anytime you start talking about religion or politics, which I'm hopefully not going to get into, I don't want to get into that on this podcast, but it's going to bring up questions that some people have. And a lot of people will be antagonistic towards your view. A lot of people are antagonistic towards Christianity. And so I do welcome questions. I would like to have people ask questions, inquisitive questions, but I do not want to see any ad hominem attacks. And an ad hominem attack is really, let me just read you the definition of ad hominem. I just got this off the internet. There's philosophy books. You can go to a number of different sources, but I thought this was a pretty good definition. So ad hominem is a reaction directed against a person rather than the position they are maintaining. So, in other words, you're not giving any reasons why you're against that particular position, and you're giving no evidence why you are against it. It's attacking the person really without a reason or evidence. And in layman's terms, I guess you could just say this is trash talking. So I'm going to be doing this podcast hopefully once a week. I'm going to try to keep it under 10 minutes. I do welcome questions. I do not like ad hominem attacks. I know there will be some people that disagree with the Christian worldview, and that is fine. It's really a lost art, and that is of really argument. And I'm not talking about people in each other's faces with their neck veins sticking out, yelling at each other. That's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about argument. Argument, a proper argument, is where people can lay out their reasons for what they believe. And we'll talk about truth and we'll talk about belief, what makes something true and what is proper belief. We'll talk about that later. But a lot of times I'll just come into the podcast and I'll be talking about just some things that are kind of on my heart at the time and things that I'm reading. So I'm really looking forward to this podcast and getting more into it. So I'm going to try to keep it under 10 minutes, like I said. And so I'm going to end it right here with this short little introduction to the Way Door. So please hit like and subscribe. And until next time, I hope your day is a blessed one.